Hello, fourth grade. Welcome to Bible. Today is lesson 2 of our unit of study on the book of Ruth. Remember, Ruth is a book of the Bible that comes after Judges. The other day we looked at lesson 1 of Ruth, and it introduced some characters, the characters of Naomi and her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Remember, at the end of lesson 1, we read and learned that Naomi was leaving the foreign country of Moab to go back to her homeland of Israel. Ruth, her daughter-in-law, decides to go with her. Ruth is going to leave her homeland of Moab and go to Israel with Naomi, which will be a foreign country to Ruth. She wants to be sure that Naomi is taken care of in her old age. Let's look at chapter 2. I would like you to be thinking about these questions. What did Ruth want to do in the wheat field? Who noticed Ruth? What did Boaz tell his men to do? And why do you think Boaz was so kind to Ruth? Think about those questions as we read. Today we introduce a new character by the name of Boaz. Remember, we also talked about how women did not have their own property. They did not work outside the home. They needed a husband or their fathers or their family to take care of them. Remember that as we read chapter 2. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech, a man of standing whose name was Boaz. And Ruth, the Moabitess, said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out and began to glean or gather up in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan or family of Elimelech. Do you think that was coincidence? Do you think she just happened to go to a field owned by a relative of Naomi's to gather grain? So in Bible times, boys and girls, everything was done by hand. So as the workers would move through the field, gleaning or harvesting the wheat, some would fall. And it was custom and it was law that any extra that fell off to the sides around the outer edges of the fields was free to the homeless or to whoever might need that wheat. So Ruth was in the field legally. She was not harvesting the wheat for herself. She was just picking up what was being dropped by the workers. That was legal. That was allowed. She would take that wheat then home to Naomi, and that's what they would live on. Let's keep reading. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they called back. Boaz asked the foreman of his harvesters, the manager, "Whose young woman is that?" The foreman replied, "She is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.' She went into the field and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I have been told all about what you have done for your mother in law since the death of her husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." There's that reference again, boys and girls, to taking refuge under God's wings, right? Goes along with our Psalm 91. "May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord," she said. "You have given me comfort and have spoken kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servant girls." In other words, Ruth was not being employed by Boaz. She was just kind of a wanderer who came up and was gleaning. So she wasn't even being employed by Boaz, but yet he says, "Stay here, glean, harvest what is left over." At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men. "Even if she gathers among the sheaves, don't embarrass her. Rather, pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up. And don't rebuke her." In other words, don't scold her. Make sure she gets what she needs. In fact, maybe even leave extra for her. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother in law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. Her mother in law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Then Ruth told her mother in law about the one at whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz," she said. "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter in law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead," she added. "That man is our close relative. He is one of our kinsman redeemers." Boys and girls, a kinsman redeemer would be a male relative who is responsible to care for another relative that might be in danger or in trouble. So remember, we've talked about women not being leaders. They do not own property. They cannot take care of themselves. They have no means to do that. They cannot have jobs. It is the men in their family, their husbands, their sons, their fathers, before they're married, who are supposed to care for the women. And so here is Naomi and Ruth. They do not have their fathers around anymore. Their husbands are dead. And so it is another relative's, a male relative's responsibility to care for them. And as it turns out, Boaz happens to be a kinsman redeemer, a kinsman, a relative that might be able to be responsible for these women. That's why he is helping Ruth. He has heard about what she has done for her mother-in-law. Then Ruth, the Moabitess, said, "He even said to me, 'Stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all my grain.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter in law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with his girls, because in someone else's field you might be harmed." So Ruth stayed close to the servant girls of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother in law. All right, let's go back to those questions that I asked at the beginning. What did Ruth want to do in the wheat field? She wanted to pick up the leftovers, right? As the harvesters were moving through, what they dropped, she was wanting to pick up and keep for herself and Naomi. Who noticed Ruth? Remember, Boaz happened to be at that particular field that day. Boaz noticed Ruth. What did Boaz tell his men to do? He told them to allow her to follow behind them and to glean and pick up what they dropped. And he told them even to perhaps accidentally on purpose leave extra, right? Why do you think Boaz was so kind to Ruth? Did you hear me read that he said, "I have been told all about what you have done for your mother in law since the death of her husband. May the Lord repay you for what you have done." So Boaz had heard about how how Ruth had left her country to move to Israel to care for her mother in law. All right, fourth graders. In today's lesson, we have a little triorama that you may work on. All right, might be fun, something different to do. Follow the directions there if you want to print that out and color it and put it together. And then we have a little worksheet that I would like you to see if you can fill out. Go back and read chapter 2 if you need to. And then again, we have another fun little The Bible Times Herald newspaper article. All right, go ahead and read it. See if you can answer the questions and see if you can unscramble the message. Fourth grade, this is Ruth, chapter 2, lesson 2. Until next time, bye.